A family during the Great Madras Famine in India, 1876. Famine-stricken people during the famine of 1876-78 in Bangalore. Under British rule, the agricultural produce was exported outside India to better markets. 13-inch Seacoast mortars of Federal Battery No. 4 with officers of 1st Connecticut Heavy Artillery near Yorktown, Virginia in May of 1862. A muss at headquarters, Army of the Potomac near Falmouth, Virginia in April of 1863. Council of War. General Ulysses S. Grant, second from left on bench at center left, Gen. George G. Meade, Assistant Secretary of War Charles A. Dana, and numerous staff officers meet at Massaponax Church in Virginia on May 21, 1864. General Sherman's men destroying the railroad before the evacuation of Atlanta, Georgia in 1864. A damaged locomotive among the ruins of the Richmond and Petersburg Railroad Depot in Richmond, Virginia in April of 1865. Fugitive African Americans are fording the Rappahannock River in Virginia, August 1862, during the Second Battle of Bull Run. Outside view of Fort Sumter in March 1865. Foot of slope on southwestern front looking southeast. Details from the burnt district of Richmond, Virginia, photographed in April of 1865. In 1980, Mike Wells took this powerful photograph of a Catholic missionary holding the hand of a starving Ugandan boy. In so many ways, it almost looks like the hand is not human. It's almost the hand of a space alien, a different species, or anything but the hand of a human being. Unfortunately, it can't be willed into being something else. It is the hand of a human being, a starving human being. Preparing and printing the New York Times, 1942. Long before the age of computerized printing presses and journalists being able to file stories via computer, the process of creating the day's newspaper was a much more arduous, handmade process. The newsroom, a conveyor belt carries completed copy up to the composing room. Copy boys mimeograph the dispatches from the telegraphs and pass them through a slot to the newsroom, where they are sorted and distributed to the various desks. A radio operator listens in to access propaganda broadcasts. The paper piled on the floor has been examined to see what has already been covered in the last edition. The photo department. The Times syndicates its photographs all over the world, sending some by clipper to Europe daily. This photo, provided by Paris's Holocaust Memorial, shows a German soldier shooting a Ukrainian Jew during a mass execution in Vinnytsia, Ukraine, sometime between 1941 and 1943. Windows of shops owned by Jews, which were broken during a coordinated anti-Jewish demonstration in Berlin, known as Kristallnacht, on November 10, 1938. Nazi authorities turned a blind eye as SA stormtroopers and civilians destroyed storefronts with hammers, leaving the streets covered in pieces of smashed windows. A group of Jews, including a small boy, is escorted from the Warsaw Ghetto by German soldiers in this April 19, 1943 photo. The picture formed part of a report from SS Gen Stroop to his commanding officer, and was introduced as evidence to the war crimes trials in Nuremberg in 1945. A German in a military uniform shoots at a Jewish woman after a mass execution in Mizach, Ukraine. In October of 1942, the 1,700 people in the Mizach ghetto fought with Ukrainian auxiliaries and German policemen who had intended to liquidate the population. Three U.S. soldiers look at bodies stuffed into an oven in a crematorium in April of 1945, Dachau concentration camp. A Russian survivor, liberated by the 3rd Armored Division of the U.S. First Army, identifies a former camp guard who brutally beat prisoners on April 14, 1945, at the Buchenwald concentration camp in Thuringia, Germany. A chest X-ray in progress at Dr. Maxime Menard's radiology department at the Cochin Hospital in Paris, circa 1914. Menard would later lose his finger to side effects from operating the X-ray machine. A Wiener ambulance with patients in layers in a horse-drawn wooden carriage. The sides are partly open but have curtains. The ambulance men are members of the Viennese Voluntary Rescue Society, founded in 1881. Post Office Department Inspector D.F. Angier, left, and Dr. L.F. Kebler, formerly of the Food and Drug Administration, try out a stretching device which claimed to increase height by 2 to 6 inches, 1931. Dr. Louis Albert Serre observes the change in the curvature of the spine as a patient self-suspends herself prior to being wrapped in a plaster of Paris bandage as part of her scoliosis treatment circa 1850 to 1900. Finishing touches are applied to the AS Hindenburg in the huge German construction hangar at Friedrichshafen. Workmen, dwarfed in comparison with the ship's huge tail surfaces, are chemically treating the fabric covering the huge hull. A flock of sheep head down the Kingsway in London, 1926. The old telephone tower in Stockholm, Sweden, with approximately 5,500 telephone lines, c. 1890. In 1964, one of the world's largest and most spectacular dismantling and reassembly projects was begun in Egypt. To rescue the ancient temples in Abu Simbel from the waters of the Nile, the temples had to be relocated. Filipinos are pictured in loincloths, sitting in a circle together at Coney Island in New York in the early 20th century, while crowds of Americans watch on from behind barriers. A young Filipino girl is pictured sitting on a wooden bench in an enclosure in Coney Island, New York, in another horrifying 1906 exhibit. Igorot men from the Philippines, wearing loincloths and carrying hand drums, dance at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, November 13, 1904. Two men pour alcohol down a drain during Prohibition in the United States, c. 1920. Americans celebrated the end of Prohibition in 1933.